Well, howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee, and I am here with New York Times bestselling author Jamie Ford.
Thanks for having me.
Ah, y'all, like I said, New York Times bestselling author. We have two of his books here, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. And y'all, did you notice we're in person? Thank
A
you.
hologram,
Yeah,
not actually here. It's
actually,
a new app.
yeah, yeah, we're anti-AI except for that.
Yeah. Tupac's gonna walk in next to the interview.
Absolutely. And no, we are not sponsored by City Brew. He was just a very kind person to bring me a coffee. So just so you know that, love me a latte. So, Jamie, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
We have Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. And then we have Jamie Ford's The Many Daughters of Afong Moy. We're going to start with the Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. Great title.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, first of all, where'd you come up with the title name?
Uh, Honestly, it was one of the first titles I came up with. Because the book is bitter and sweet, and my grandma, my Chinese grandma, my Yin Yin, she always used to sort of spout off some sort of bastardized Confucianism. It was always like, you need to eat, you know, sweet things and bitter, which reflect the nature of life. And I'm like, okay, whatever. It sounded so fortune cookie-ish,
Hmm?
but perhaps leans that and philosophy. I also hate Confucianism, so it's just kind of weird.
I want to come back to that. Yeah.
Uh, Um, but my editor and my agent thought the title was too long, and they wanted me to come up with other ones. And I guess passive aggressively, I did. I came up with like 80 of the worst titles
Yeah.
you could ever imagine, knowing they would never choose any of them, and just kind of outlasted them.
Nice. That's right. Stick to your guns. Be petty, folks. When you were writing this, so this book came out in 2009. This mainly examines the relationship between a boy coming of age, falling in love. It's also his dad, and his father's a Chinese immigrant. And it's a really a story of strained relationships between father and son, but also assimilating into American culture, generational assimilation, Americanization. Talk to me about what inspired you to write this.
Oh, um, it's just being biracial, honestly. And it's funny. I'm fairly white passing. People who are mixed Asian usually see it. If I'm in Hawaii, people see it. Um, but you never quite feel like you fit in. So I was the generation that didn't learn Cantonese. 'Cause my dad didn't want me to learn Cantonese. And yet I grew up in this very Chinese American household, but I didn't feel Chinese enough. And then with my Caucasian friends, I don't feel white enough. Because it's the classic third grade, and I brought cuttlefish to school because I love it. It's like squid jerky, for lack of a better description. And of course, I mean, this is like the 70s, late 70s, before people are actually eating sushi in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I had the reaction of like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And there was that moment of like, wait, not everyone eats this.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you see how it impacts, I mean, even the love interest, Kiko, am I pronouncing that? Keiko?
Keiko.
Keiko. She's Japanese, and we're seeing some of those things. Here is the lead character. He's taken to this young girl named Keiko. She's Japanese, the boy's Chinese, and there's some struggle there.
Yeah.
And the boy doesn't see it because he's here it's all mixed in American, but his father does. Um, you talk about being biracial. Did you ever see any of that growing up? Just like different rules for the game?
Different rules for the game. Uh, yeah. I mean, there's that moment where I was in high school and I realized, oh, like my family is different than everyone else economically. 'Cause my dad grew up in a red line neighborhood in Seattle, and um, he was told he had three career options: restaurant, laundry, or gambling.
Hmm.
And so there is diminished opportunity for communities of color. They are policed differently. Banks give them loans differently. Um, Not to say that people can't transcend all of that, but the rules are different, and they're still different. They're probably more different now with what's going on in the greater world.
Well, and that's one of the things you cover is you talk about the internment camps, you talk about how Seattle really became a very scary place of people turning in other people and what that looked like. I mean, it's interesting to read this and Keiko getting caught up in these camps, and then you turn around and you look online and you see what's going on in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, here we are, not even a century later, and things really haven't changed.
No. Yeah, the same old record keeps getting played. It's just a little more weaponized right now.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think we kind of live in the what's called the golden age of half truths, where so many news sources they just give you half of the truth for effect. When because there's an agenda behind it. There's an audience that wants to hear a certain thing. In Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, an example of that would be the FBI. They're making raids in Japantown. They're arresting people, and the reasoning was that they had arrested some people, Japanese Americans, and in their home they had detailed maps of the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, which where there's aircraft carriers and destroyers and battleships. And that sounds really nefarious until you learn that those maps were in an issue of Life magazine.
mm,
And most households had that same set of maps on their coffee table.
mm,
But again, it's half the truth. And I think half the truth is it goes down, you swallow it, you believe it um, easier than a lie. I mean, people can
mm.
detect a lie easier than a half truth. A half truth is like just enough to hit my confirmation bias and then move on to the next half truth.
Yeah, that's a great point. These half truths, these things that just I need it to be enough, and I'll fill in the rest somehow.
Yeah.
When you were doing this research for this book, what was that? You brought up Confucianism, and we'll talk about that for sure.
It's
But
just a weird quirk.
no, it's well, because you start to see that. You see that in America, folks like rejecting, Western Christianity or Western, and they'll fly the other way, and they're like, actually, we have some thoughts about that one too.
Yeah.
Um, but tell me, when you started doing this research, you must have lived at the library and bookstores. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you covered this, folks. I mean, this is it's a love story, it's a coming of age story, but it's a historical fiction. Like you're reading this and you feel like you're there. So, how did you do the research for this?
Boy, everything you can imagine. There's just some go-to nonfictional books. I've joined Densho, which is a foundation that documents the oral history of the Japanese internment, so I could watch hundreds of interviews. I wanted to see what the neighborhood looked like because
Mm,
today in Seattle, the Interstate I-5 splits what was the International District in two. Uh, and so I wanted to see what it looked like back then. So just finding old maps on eBay from the 30s. But I interviewed someone in Seattle. I did a lot of research at the Wing Luke Asian Museum, which I'm now on the board of. Go Wing Luke. Um, yeah, there was things like letters from Minidoka. There are two editions of just reprints of letters from Japanese Americans who had corresponded with people on the outside. And all that was incredibly helpful in rebuilding that world.
that must have been also painful. I know when I do my research on women's history, there's sometimes I just need to like take a minute because the stuff we're reading can be very yeah, so dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had good support and especially when you found something particularly upsetting?
Um, yeah, I mean, I, I did, but there were things that even I didn't know, and I grew up in the Seattle area, and so Seattle has an institutional knowledge of the internment that perhaps Chicago doesn't have. But even growing up there, my knowledge was really wide, but it wasn't very deep. And occasionally I'd go deep, and it would be one of those like, oh wow, I didn't know that. And if I didn't know that, then probably lots of people didn't know that.
And that it does become a sort of responsibility that when especially as writers, that when you come up on something painful, like you feel it, you deal with it, but you're like, people have to know this. Like, so thank you for your
Sure.
advocacy.
And now it seems like everyone does know this, and really the man to thank for that is his name's Tom McKenna. He's stepped away now, retired from his job, but he started the Digital Foundation. It was his goal by a certain date. It was like 2025 or 2030 that everyone in America will have some knowledge of Japanese internment
Mm,
because it wasn't always so. So when that book came out in 2009, I did a book event in Chicago, and a woman came up to me and she said, "Hi, I'm a retired high school history teacher. I didn't know this happened." And that's shocking.
yeah.
We just take for granted growing up a piece of Northwest that everybody
No.
has some sort of historical understanding.
Well, and speaking of historical understanding, break the mold on Confucianism. Shatter us, please.
Confucianism. I've said this on occasion. No one ever asks.
You're like, please ask me.
Yeah. Get comfortable while I rant on Confucianism, the rant that no one wants to hear. Um, Ming Dynasty China before Confucianism, 1400s. China had the largest navy on the planet, larger than all of Europe combined. They had sailed down just shy of the Horn of Africa. They were trading with India, um, and they were a huge, powerful, technologically forward entity. And then when the philosophy of Confucianism took hold at a time where there was a change of leadership, if you will, they the focus became on staying home.
Mm,
And that's when China became an isolationist country. They burned their ships, they burned records of a lot of these voyages, and they also, it's an era where women were clearly second class citizens, but it kind of canonized that for centuries and centuries. And so I think without Confucianism, I think the world would technologically look quite different.
mm.
And yeah, and women probably would have escaped foot binding sooner and would have been able to be educated and have their own independent lives and autonomy.
Well, and so for our listeners, is Confucianism, is it a religion? Like, are you going to a temple and worshiping with a book, or is it a way of life? What expand on it?
Probably kind of yes
Okay.
to all of
Yeah.
that. Um, yeah, it's like asking someone if they're Jewish. Is this cultural or ethnicity? And
Mm,
it could be both. Um, And yeah, with Confucianism, it was philosophical underpinning for a society, and it really changed the the norms and almost the moral structure of of a civilization.
mhm.
Um, and so yeah, for us in the West, when we think of religion, it has to be deified.
Right.
There's got to be a guy in a robe, the
Yeah.
halo that we um, worship, bow to,
Yeah.
or is our gatekeeper to the great beyond. And in other cultures, you know, it's broader.
Yeah.
Um, so this one was thought based,
Yeah.
not miracle based.
Yeah. Yeah, and did very little to help women, but absolutely. That's a cool part that especially when you were moving into the many daughters of Afong Moy, which was over a decade later. What were you doing in between?
In between these books,
Yeah,
actually, I have two other books.
that's right.
Yeah, I wrote. Um, yeah, I've written six books, published four, on contract for another one. Um, yeah, these are. This is. I have four books, and I do look at them like my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior
Yeah,
novels because I feel like I grew each
yeah.
time. And so this is definitely the beginning and the capstone of my journey for him.
Well, and it's cool that inevitably you didn't mean to do father son, and now you have the many daughters. Um, folks, this is a really cool. It's again still in line with that historical fiction, but this involves a lot more sci-fi time travel. The premise is that what a near future um, how do I want to say this? The premise is that at the very beginning of
Hard book to describe
yeah,
because it's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Afong Moy was the first Chinese female immigrant to the United States, and this takes her story and her daughters and what happened to them over American history up into probably a near future woman, a Chinese woman that is a lineage to Afong Moy dealing with generational trauma therapy and starts looking into, like you said, near future,
Yeah.
really cool technological innovations that allow her to do epigenetic therapy. And it's a cool, it's just, it's cool.
It's
It sounds way cooler than that.
I don't think it's I mean I've written
Hmm.
like if you read
Oh,
something like Moby Dick, that is, because it's anachronistic and it's complex. Um, for me, I think of that as like highbrow literature. But the Book of the Month Club, which shows that, they put a sticker on it that said highbrow literature, which for me that says you have to think too hard. And I don't think that's actually what it means, but in this case, there's just a lot going on. It's historical, it's speculative, set in slightly in the future. Created a matrilineal line from Apang Moy down, 6 generations, so it bounces all over the world, different time periods,
wow.
and created a therapeutic modality where essentially you can re-remember the past. Um, and it's funny, since the book came out, people have asked, "Is this a real technology?
Yeah.
Because I need this."
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
I,
It was like that's why I wrote it
yeah.
because I need it to.
Well, that is cool. Yeah, well, you're just, authoring things into existence.
You know, I think it was Arthur C. Clarke wrote about artificial satellites in the 30s, and then in the 50s, Sputnik went up.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that hopes, like, oh, someone will be, that's a cool idea. Why don't we do that? The one thing that I did write about, uh, there's a narrative that's set in the 2030s in Seattle, and Seattle at the time, in my book, has a typhoon season.
Mm.
Um, because there were these Arctic river storms, arc storms, which
Yeah.
when I wrote the book 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they were kind of theoretical.
Mm.
Like it was the idea of the 100-year storm, and now Seattle gets hit by an Arctic river storm, 5 or 6 times a year.
Oh.
So unfortunately, we manifested that into reality. Sorry, Seattle.
Sorry. Well, I loved its use on the dating apps too, and also just looking at how some stories can't be changed, but they can have slightly different out. There's just a lot to unpack, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, Epigenetics, please educate us. What is epigenetics?
Epigenetics. It all goes back to Confucianism, damn it. No, hang in there. No, when we think of genetics, we think of things that are easily identifiable: eye
Oh,
color, hair color, how tall you are,
yeah.
earlobes, things like that. Epigenetics is the the framework of inheriting psychological traits that trauma affects the methylation of our DNA. We pass those sets down to our children, and we kind of, encumber them with the baggage of the past. Um, what kind of psychological traits are inherited? You know, it's
Yeah.
like everything really. In the book, it deals with like levels of empathy and the way we interact with other human beings, or ability or inability to care and
Wow.
love for other people. Um, but I also wanted to explore what are some positive traits we might inherit, like resiliency or curiosity,
Yeah.
things like that.
And that's beautiful too, because we inherit everything, not just the bad. But but yeah, that resiliency, that creativity, I even liked how you went back and in order for her to heal, all of the past versions of her had to heal in some way too. Like they had to stand up for themselves, make a different decision. And it's really cool to see like how our decisions overlap and unfold into one another. When you were doing this, first of all, what is Afong Moy? Is that a real person? How did you come across this character?
Ah. I first learned about her in the late 90s, and there was a full page feature in the San Francisco Chronicle celebrating Asian American Heritage Month. People, people do read these things. Um, and it began with Filipino sailors landing on the West Coast in the 1400s, and it went all the way up to Christy Yamaguchi winning the gold medal in the Olympics. And somewhere on the line, it said the first Chinese woman to set foot in America, Ah Hong Moy, takes the stage in
Mhm.
1834. Um, and I tucked that away.
Yeah.
That's something I like to explore, write about. There's not a lot known about her. And she really, for a hot moment, she was the most famous woman in America. There were 200 newspaper articles about her. There were racing horses named after her. There were poems and songs written about her. She performed live in theaters from Toronto to Cuba, up and down the East Coast. But in all of the newspaper articles, we only hear from her handlers, the people who
Oh,
have monetized her. We never hear from her. And her actual story, in all likelihood, ends quite tragically because in the 1840s, someone reported seeing her living in a poorhouse in New Jersey. And she had bound feet, so she was already limited in what she could do. It was believed that she was told that she would return to China in 2 years. And I think that's just what they told
yeah.
her, and she never returned. And probably always wanted to.
And that's awful. Like, you
Yeah,
think about the forced migration, just how people get lost in the system and abroad,
or
um,
exploited.
yeah, exploited. Because it talks about the handlers, how the handlers sexually abused her or felt like, they just all the different ways that her life was not her own.
Yeah,
And it
not
was
a lot of agency.
no, and it's very beautifully and respectfully told. Um, because then, oh man, there's five
6.
6. We go all and because there's the at the very end that because
Yeah,
the daughter,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um,
There's, you know, it's unlikely she had children, but I wanted to give her descendants that could kind
yeah,
of give her a voice over time and redeem her story a little bit. And I do think that's what we often do. We hear the hardship stories of our grandparents or great grandparents, and yet here we are living,
yes.
in a society where people don't die of
No.
polio, cholera in San Francisco anymore.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and it's, and both of these are beautifully written, I think, because you look at the human experience, but really over and over, like, you choose love or you choose hope, and it's a very inspiring way to tell a story of tragedy because what you're saying is these stories aren't over.
Yeah.
Like,
And I like love stories. It's kind of, even if I don't try to write a love story, it becomes a love story.
yeah.
That's kind of how my brain is wired. And that's okay. I just lean into
Well, I see you don't like the dating apps. I thought that was
it.
funny.
Yeah, that actually came from a real thing. There was in the book I have, there's a contemporary uh, timeline set in 2014 in Seattle where there's a young woman who has created a feminist dating platform, but their angel investor is a billionaire accused of sexual assault. Just not too hard to believe in real life. That probably has happened or is currently happening. But there was a real dating platform at the time, and it didn't do so well. And I think a lot of it had to do with the founders were women, and at the time, majority of venture capital to tech startups
Oh,
went to companies started by men. A percentage of like 89% went to men. And
yeah.
so they had some seed capital and then they didn't have enough to keep going. Even though it won, Geek Wires App of the Year. I mean, it was I'm not on dating platforms, so I'm
Mm,
sure there's some modern analog that is a little more not as shallow and reactionary as some of them, and some of them that are more protective of, of women and how
yeah.
they want to be chosen or choose. Um, but at the time, it was kind of very
Yeah. Well, and one of the things too that um, you talk about is really particularly the near future character that's going through the epigenetic therapy. She has her daughter on her mind a lot. Do
Yeah.
you feel that, like, I mean, you're a parent. Do you feel like you're thinking about your kids as you're writing often?
Oh yeah. Like, uh, maybe not as I'm writing per se, but just I think about them
Yeah.
in general, just as a dad. But when they were young, in that age where they're becoming their own autonomous little humans, you notice behavior that is an echo of yourself or your grandparent, your father. And I was always delighted and a little mystified by that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just like, where did you learn that? That
Right.
kind of stuff. And it's not a hard sell. I think most people that I talk to about this, they all have anecdotal moments like that in their own life where they look at their granddaughter and she was sitting on the carpet a certain way and holding a pencil in a certain way that
Yeah.
it matches a photo that their grandmother did. And maybe there's some physiological reasons why that happens, but a lot of it is a lot of it is inherited psychology. Um, I, it's
Wow.
the balance between nature and nurture, and they're both in there. But in doing all this research, nature plays a larger role than I think any of us want to admit.
Yeah.
It robs us of our agency and our autonomy. We think, of course, I'm going to make this decision because my dad did it that way.
Right. Right. Well, and I think you're right. It does. We don't want those things and all the bad things,
Yeah,
especially if there is like alcoholism or something in the family. It's like, oh, this denial. But truly like embracing, I don't want to say embracing, accepting it, addressing it, um, can be some of those things that also allow us to change the story for the next generation. How all right, speaking of your next generation,
yeah,
or any of your kids writers?
not yet.
Okay.
Definitely have some artistic children. Both my sons are musicians. My daughter Maddie is a tattoo artist, um,
Yeah.
and
You want to show that? That's pretty cool, man.
yeah, I have.
Yeah.
It's the only tattoo I have. It was a kind of a multi-parter. Um, she lives in Missoula. We're in Great Falls, and so the day after Christmas, a bunch of us went up there for family tattoo day. So her Christmas gift to five of us was tattoos.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was great. It's just hanging at the shop, and just up
Yeah.
next, and she's doing her thing. It's super
Oh,
cool.
well, and it looks great, so she's definitely talented.
Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah, yeah,
When you're like,
yeah. That's a good. That's a. She wanted to be a tattoo artist when she was like 16. I thought that was amazing. Got her first tattoo machine at Christmas.
cool.
She tattooed grapefruit. Not allowed to
Yeah.
tattoo any humans or friends until she, was officially
Right.
uh, apprenticed into it.
So
But
cool.
now she has a great career, no student loans, so
Yeah.
it's a good way to go.
Not to mention, I mean, you talk about generations and tradition, tattooing goes back so long. So,
Yeah,
that'd be cool if there's a short story for you there one day.
yeah.
That's in
Her style is American traditional. My dad was covered with tattoos,
oh,
all American traditional. So sometimes it just makes sense.
yeah, that's super rad. Um, well, hold on, I wanna check the time real quick because it
Sure.
feels like it went by very fast, but also not at all. Alright, we're good.
Oh, that clock's not right.
That one's not, can I zoom in a little bit? Okay, so one of the things that makes Jamie Ford's this later book, as he was telling, his freshman, sophomore, junior album. If this
Yeah,
is the freshman, this is the
senior.
senior. You definitely took on a sci-fi
Yeah,
approach here.
did.
That's super cool. Tell us about how the first book is very much more grounded in history. This is a sci-fi element. How did you get into sci-fi to structure this?
That's always been my mother tongue. It's been my first language. Is speculative fiction. One of my favorite authors is Harlan Ellison, um, and he was a little before my time, but one of his books was banned from my high school. And I went to the public library and checked it out, and that's one of the motivations to become a writer.
Yeah.
First time I saw that books had the power to cause parents to absolutely lose their minds. That was fascinating to me. um, but yeah, Hotel and Corner Bitter and Sweet. It's historical fiction. I wrote it not long after my dad had passed away, and so when my dad, who was 100% Chinese, when he passed, I felt very much cut off from my heritage. In addition to living in Montana, which is far away from my family there, and I really wrote it for myself as a kind of therapy, and I had no idea it would be, published in 35 different countries. And because of that, because it was so successful, I inadvertently created a box for myself where the expectation was that I was just writing historical fiction, and I wanted to write 3 Seattle books, which I did, and then I wanted out of that box. Um, I just got bored with it. I'm more interested in blending history and the future all in one book. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Did you feel the response to you breaking the box? How was that?
Oh, I sigh heavily. My previous 3 books were with a publisher that when I showed them the idea for this and about 80 pages that I had written, they really weren't enthused about it. They probably would have paid me really well just to stay in the box, and I didn't want to be in the box, so I actually had to leave. Which was scary because after having the same editor, the same publisher for all my career, to essentially be a free agent all over again, and have your agent pitching your book to other houses. But it ended up being, and I was like, well, maybe that's the end of my career. Writers, we are so secure in all of our things. Sell 1 million books, yeah, it could all blow up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And my agent thought it'd be time for a fresh start, and like I was not so confident, but this is what I wanted to write, and I wasn't going to compromise that. And it ended up being like a 7-way auction, which is a good thing when publishers are bidding on your book. And so I ended up at a great house. I went from Random House to Simon and Schuster, and now I'm back at Random House. My editor took a job back at Random House and bought out my contract, so it brought me over.
Well, and thank you for sharing your publishing journey, because I think a lot of folks think about that. They're like that box that people, especially when you have success in a box.
Oh yeah.
Like and then people want more and more of the same thing, and especially for you, this was like you said, a love story and a grief story. Like there wasn't a way you probably could have found other, but it was just so unique and special to you and your time. You said, it's how as you were writing this, did you feel like angry, sad, further from your father? How did because there's times that these characters, the father and son, like bubblegum or something, they come back and forth. So
yeah, this is one of those. It's a how much do you want to know kind of a moment. During COVID, and my book came out kind of on the back end of that as we were getting back to the real world. I found out that my father, all those tattoos that he had, I was always told that from like age 17 to 27, 28, he was in the Merchant Marines. He was on a merchant vessel. Let's forget all those tattoos. It turns out he was in prison. Those are prison tattoos. Yeah. And he's been gone for 25 years. So this was a family secret. And it turns out like everybody knew but me. Like I was the youngest. I was like his favorite, if you will. They just didn't want me to know. And I had a godfather who had similar tattoos, and I realized they were cellmates. They yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, San Quentin
Uh-huh.
prison, Folsom, like
Yeah.
real federal prisons, as well as some
Yeah.
stints at various jails and things like that.
Yeah, but that's a lot to reckon with. And
Yeah,
especially, it's not just, like you said, your godfather, too. You're like, both of you guys. But like,
yeah. I actually found a perk walk photo, 1958. It's the last time he was arrested, and it's him, my godfather, two other guys,
yeah.
all kind of covering their faces as they're walking into the courthouse. And it's front page of the Humboldt Standard News, which is in Northern California. So it's front page above the fold, full headline. Um, yeah, that was a wild sort of revelation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Digging into family history. It's funny too, particularly my brother has stumbled into this as Southern white folk who have been there for
Mm-hmm.
generations. Like you start clawing back the family story, and
Yeah,
you're like, oh,
yeah.
like there's some bad news bears in this, and some real things that you know. I mean, literally, I mean, you're talking about privilege and how different it's. Yeah. So,
Can I add something that will
yeah,
also sort of blow your mind?
yeah, please.
Um, maybe your minds. I I haven't talked about this a lot in interviews or anything like that. And I'm sort of saving that for this book I'm currently working on, which is it's kind of a part of the thesis. Um, my dad and my mom got divorced when I was like 15. He remarried. I wasn't very close to his new wife, so when he passed away, we just kind of went our different directions. And when I learned that he had been in prison, I called her and said, "Did you know my dad was in prison?" And she said this, and I'm going to quote her, but she said it in the manner you would say, like, "Oh, I think it's going to rain today." But she said, "I only knew about that one time he killed a guy in a bar fight." I was like, "That what? Tell me more." And she's like, "No, he didn't really want to talk about it, so I never asked." I'm like, "Shut up." Um, so, because I had done some digging and I saw
Yeah.
that he'd been arrested for robbery and narcotics and things like that.
Hmm.
I knew he didn't graduate from high school. Um, I didn't realize it was because he was in jail.
Yeah.
I thought he was on a ship. Um, but I talked to my elder Chinese relatives. Of course, they all knew. And they said, well, your dad was in a Chinese gang. And because my thought was like, if he killed someone, why isn't he still in prison? Why
Right.
didn't he die in prison? That was never investigated because it was a fight between two Chinese guys. And as my older cousin said, if there was a dead body in an alley in Seattle's Chinatown in the 50s and you called the police, they would hang up on you.
Mm.
Communities of color
Right.
chronically underserved by the police. And so apparently with some sort of gang activity, half of my relatives said, no, no, your dad took the fall for another guy, another gang member. And my other half were like, well, you know your dad. I was like, yeah, I do know my dad.
Yeah.
He struggled with emotional regulation. Let's
Hmm.
just say that.
Well, it would, I mean, were you able to flesh out more on his story? I mean, like, that's a hell of a man. I mean, you talk about epigenetics, like, coming into one person.
Yeah,
Like,
I have one of my dear friends, and he's also an author. His name's Luis Alberto Urrea. I'm half Chinese. He's half Mexican. His dad was very charismatic slash scary,
yeah.
like my dad. And his dad was a police officer in Tijuana that would take criminals up and throw them out of airplanes. So when I told him, he was just like, "Dude, we're the sons of murderers," and it's a weird revelation to think about
Um,
that.
well, and then as you mentioned earlier, sons of murderers that grow up to be insecure writers.
Yeah, and,
Like,
and me and Luis, we were the youngest of our families. We were the bonus child, so there's like all these other kids from
oh,
another
yeah.
marriage, and then we were the one child from
Uh-huh.
our father. Although my dad did have another kid before he married my mom, so I do have a brother there. But we both grew up to be these very emotional, poet-hearted kids that read comic books and did art, and I don't know. That's a good place to land rather than carrying the family mantle of organized crime.
And it is, or growing up and seeking revenge, or yeah, like whatever it looks like, especially to bring it again back to the modern day. um we're seeing, I'm really worried that we are radicalizing the next. I'm not worried, we are, like, I mean, and why wouldn't you be,
We're
like,
deranging the next generation
right,
at least.
right, at
Yeah,
the very least. I'm like
yeah,
watching this and I'm like, oh my god, if you're a Minnesota school kid right now and you're at home doing remote school because ICE is in, it's like,
it's my daughter-in-law
is it really?
who has, I won't say where she's from, but she has brown skin and Spanish is her first language. She has a master's degree. She's been in this country almost a decade. Her undergrad is in astrophysics. She's a brilliant young woman. She works for a university, but they're having her work from home
Yeah.
until things settle out. Um, but when she travels, just going to Target, she brings a binder with her green card, with her marriage certificate, her social security number, because yes, undocumented people get jobs and get social security numbers and pay taxes, her pay stubs, um, her student visas before that, basically all the stuff that she would, in addition to her attorney's phone number and
Yeah.
everything. But she has to take that with her everywhere she goes for fear of just being thrown in a van and then dumped in someplace like China.
Yeah. Right. Right. And sent somewhere else. I'm so sorry that she's dealing with, well, you and your family are dealing with that, and so many families across the
Yeah,
United
that's why
States.
we were going to do this earlier when I rescheduled. It was because that was going
Well, and on that week, I think you were the third cancellation. And what's interesting was that, so this was the week of Minnesota Ice. Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
on. Yeah.
And Renee Good. And I had you canceled, and then like an hour later, I had another Episcopal reverend who has a platform that was like, I gotta go. There's something happening in Austin, Texas, and I
Yeah.
was like, what?
Uh,
And it just like, and it's not, they're not normal emails when you get these listeners. It's like, hey, so sorry, I have to cancel. ICE is at my kid's daycare. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll call you later. Like, it's
yeah.
just, it's not like, I forgot about my kid's soccer practice, which is what you would want if
Yeah.
someone cancels. I don't want you to cancel for these horrific things.
And she had seen at her university some of her peers, and they had to self deport. But the reason their student visas were canceled and they were declared illegal was parking tickets. So I broke the law coming here. I went 30 in a 25 speeding zone. So it's that level of criminality. Anything that they can use to justify to say you are a criminal. And of course, because of the implicit bias of white people towards people with brown skin, you say criminal, they think drug dealer, they think predator, they think something like that, when it's probably someone who bounced a check
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago
Oh yeah.
and who had a job and paid their taxes and bought a house, raised a family, and now they're told they're not allowed to stay here. And it's almost exclusively happening to people with brown skin.
And just remember, folks, it is a misdemeanor to cross the border illegally. It's not a felony. A felony is what Donald Trump has 32 of.
Yeah.
So we
We are through the looking glass.
well, and the other side of it too is, I'm sure we're hearing more and more. Recently, I listened to a JD Vance thing about how they are importing anti-American ideas into this country. And I was like, okay, so I know that you're going to use that to go after quote unquote Middle Eastern brown countries, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start, like, it's the idea of importing, like, that has messed, like, I had to rewind it and I was like, importing anti-American ideas.
And the funny thing is, for someone like J.D. Vance or really anyone, I mean, like my family, my Chinese American family has been here 20 years longer than Donald Trump's family. Is he more American than me? Does it matter? Like, why is this a penis measuring contest of how long you've been in the country? But those folks that are so critical of that, they often say, well, my my grandparents came here the right way, or my parents did, and or better yet, I want them to do it the right way. Just ask, what is that right way? No clue of
Right.
how
Oh no.
it happens, and their parents or grandparents, like, there wasn't a process
No.
until the 20s, where you basically just lived in this country for 5 years, have someone vouch for you, boom, you're an American citizen. And so they act like their parents navigated this Byzantine path and became a citizen. So why can't, you're from Guatemala, why can't you do that? Because it's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quota on how many people from certain countries. So people wait 15, 20 years to get citizenship. Um, and in that time, yes, they may have bounced a check, or yes, they may have, you know, not paid a speeding ticket or something like that in a timely fashion. But now that's being dredged up to deport them.
Well, and then the more you look at history of immigration in the United States, I mean, the leading establishers, settlers here were capitalists, Christians, and criminals. Like it was
Yeah.
like, and even for my family, I'm Larson. My dad is Swedish. Um, there is some rumor that he stole a bunch of my great grandfather stole a bunch of apples from the king's land, and he could either suffer punishment or come to the United States. And so he came to the United States, and of course he stole apples from the king's land because he needed them. I'm not gonna um, but I just like think about like we act like America was settled by like the best of the best. And I'm not like, but I always just look at it, I'm like, were we though? We were just
Yeah, I mean, you were a chaplain, you
right.
had a theology background, and so you know that the Pilgrims and the Puritans were separatists,
Oh yeah,
and they didn't believe in freedom of religion. They wanted to go to a place where everyone had to practice their religion.
their religion, and they wanted to call the rules. Yeah,
And that's the foundational principle of this country, are people that um, do anything you want as long as it's what we want you to do.
well, you mentioned that you were working on another book. You've done your high school. Now,
Yeah,
now we're
I've
going.
graduated.
You've graduated. What's
Oh.
next?
Yeah, this book, boy, I need to be careful what I
Okay.
say here.
Okay.
No, not for that reason, but I have a book under contract that I've been working on. That's a novel. It's kind of in a reductive way, it's like a murder mystery set in 1958 in Seattle. Um, and I'm almost done with that, but several months ago, I just, I just vectored off and like, I'm going to write this other book. My agent doesn't know about it. My editor doesn't know about it, which I'm sure they would be thrilled to know I'm not finishing the book I promised them. And instead, I'm writing this other thing. But I don't know. It deals with my dad and a bunch of other stuff. But I've grown in the last 4 years, and there's different things I want to say. So it's actually a nonfiction book about childhood trauma. It's not trauma porn. If anything, it's about the way trauma was misdiagnosed for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and all the weird things we did to treat / shame people about it. And there's a wonderful book out there currently called "Everything Is Tuberculosis" by
Yeah.
Green. It's a great book, and it's a nonfiction book, and so that book is a little bit memoir, a little bit cultural commentary, and that's what I'm working on. And it's based around the ACE test. Are you familiar with the adverse childhood experiences?
Oh yeah.
And so I was a 9 until I found out my father was incarcerated, maybe a perfect 10.
Really?
So it really is almost like deals with sort of the history behind each of those questions and some strange historical examples and examples of my own life.
Wow.
So that's what I'm working on.
That's awesome.
I'm almost done with that.
Yeah. Well, and it's heavy, but it's necessary. And like you said, you have more things to say.
Yeah. I wrote some essays, and I was just like, this really would fit a larger narrative. And my wife is my first reader, and I showed her a chapter, and she was just like, oh, this is drop the other book, finish this book.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. We're excited for you. I can't wait to have you when it's done and it's published and then it's on the New York Times best-selling list again. I hope they all get there.
I just hope it's published.
I just hope
I just hope it's published. Hope they don't think I'm insane for writing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, like sometimes when I'm doing all the research for my stuff, I'll be like, this book better do well. Because if I did all this research and took on all this vicarious trauma and it flops, like
it's a lot.
it's a lot. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for being here. Please tell the folks where they can follow up, buy your books, or anything else you'd like to share.
You can buy my books anywhere books are sold. There's a very famous author who he said there's no wrong way to buy books, but the best way to buy books is from an independent bookstore. So I kind of recommend that. But really, books are free at the library.
Yep.
There's no wrong way to do it. All my books are in audio. All my books are in multiple languages. So you have a mom that speaks a Spanish edition. I got you covered. Yeah, thank you.
Well, and then I like your commentary on things. Can people follow you on social media?
Yeah. My love-hate relationship with social media. My website is just jamieford.com that has my tour and speaking appearances and workshops that I teach on occasion. And yeah, I'm on all the normal places at jamieford.com, Jamie Ford, like the car. If you Google Jamie Ford, you will also find a Playboy model, same name, same spelling.
Yeah.
So I'm the one with the smaller boobs.
Yeah.
And she actually reached out to me a few years ago. She did. She's based in Vegas. She's like, hey, you come to Vegas, we got to get a photo together. You can be in a bikini and I'll be in front of the typewriter. That would be
so funny.
Okay, maybe.
Oh my gosh. No, that is good. Yeah, I don't know what it would do for the brand, but it would be funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to meet her, just to get a photo. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm on Threads, and I know all of these entities have cruel corporate masters, kind of picking the lesser of evils.
It is. All right, folks, that's another episode of Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Lee, and I was here with New York Times bestselling author Jamie Ford.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Go purchase one of his books. Go read. Go do something for yourself. This is a very talented author. Do yourself a favor. Get some Kleenex and read one of these books. You will not be. They're one of those. You can't put them down. I read them in a weekend. So, all right, folks. See you next time on Follow the Leader.